Welcome to A.U.M. Ask Us Marketing. I am Callie Fedosenko, your host. I am the owner and operator of Callie Collective, a digital marketing agency designed to build relationships with your target audience through data-driven content, websites, and advertising. Today's episode is brought to you by the Financial Planning Association, otherwise known as the FPA. FPA has great resources for advisors like you, including a phenomenal national conference in September where you can meet me in real life in the vendor hall. So I really hope I get to see you there. So today we're talking with Sarah from Favorite Daughter Media about how you can be a better podcast guest. And while it may sound like we're going to be spending a lot of time on etiquette, we're actually going to be discussing how you can turn listeners into leads. So welcome with me, Sarah Losi.
Hi,
Welcome,
thank you so
Sarah.
much. Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Yes, I tell you what, I haven't tripped over my words so much since I started this.
I make people nervous. I get it.
I guess so. So Sarah, tell me, how can we turn listeners into leads?
That is a great question. And there are a few ways, but my go to way is through lead gen and lead magnets.
Okay.
And podcasts are such a great place for lead magnets because you're reaching out to an established audience and you're reaching out to an audience that has trust in the host. So when we listen to a podcast regularly, we've really formed that kind of bond with a host, and we trust them, and we know that if they're bringing this person on, they've vetted them, they believe in what they're doing, and they already almost have a built-in trust in you for that reason. So creating a lead magnet and having it be somewhere very easily accessible and having just one URL, my always like secret to success is always buy a URL for every lead magnet.
Okay.
I think I have like 100 that I own.
Okay,
I'm the queen of URLs.
So are you saying you have a different URL for each episode or for each lead magnet?
For each lead magnet. And honestly, basically for each page of my website, they all have individual URLs. Because with a podcast, people are listening to it in the car or on the treadmill, places where they don't have time or the ability to write down a phone number, write down your contact info. But if you have a very catchy, memorable URL that's not your website.com/this/lead magnet /podcast, all of these different things that make it so long and hard to remember. Just have one simple one. Exactly. While they're driving, they can remember it, go get it later. It makes it so much easier.
How much money have you spent on domains?
I don't want to talk about it. They're $11.99 for the first year, and I pretend that's all I spend on them and forget that they renew every year for another $23 each. I probably own at least 50, honestly.
Yeah, 50. Whew.
We don't talk
Although
about
this is encouraging me, like that's a really good idea to have separate URLs, you know. Also, it's good for SEO.
Yes, and literally like every page of my website has its own URL. And that builds credibility. If I'm talking to someone in real estate and I can tell them to go to like podcastforrealestate.com,
right?
And I own that domain, that makes me sound like, oh wow, she actually knows what she's doing. She's the person for real estate podcasts.
Dang.
So
we should do a whole other episode just on that.
I could talk about URLs for days. It's ridiculous.
So as a podcast guest, what kinds of expectations should you go in with? You know, if I have a lead gen and the lead magnet set up, like what should I expect being a guest?
That can be a hard question to ask because some of it there's just so many different factors that it depends on. It depends on the show itself. It depends on how well matched it is to your audience, and it also depends on you. And I see a lot of people who guest on podcasts and they tell me, you know, I did that for a while, but I saw nothing come out of it. So I gave up. I just stopped doing it. And I'd ask them, well, what did you do after?
Yeah.
And it's nothing. They're like,
Yeah.
well, I went on the show. That's not enough.
Yeah.
So are you promoting it? Are you promoting it before it comes out and after it comes out? Are you trying to get the word out more? Because there's so much SEO with a podcast episode for your website that you can be driving traffic to your website without them coming through the podcast itself. So with podcast guesting, I like to think of ROI instead of return on investment, it's return on impact. So there's so many different ways that podcast episodes can impact your brand and your reach and your message, as long as you're doing it the right way and you're really putting that work in.
Yeah.
So what can you expect? It can vary a lot, but if you do the work, if you lay the groundwork, I've seen email lists grow by like thousands in a week.
Jeez, thousands. Tell me about that person. What did they do? And how can we copy it?
They got booked on a really big podcast called Bigger Pockets.
Okay.
And the episode got, I know on YouTube it got like hundreds of thousands of views. So I don't even know what the podcast itself got. So when you get on a big podcast like that, that can happen. And that's why it's really a great tool. But also smaller audiences can be just as powerful, because really people think of like a small podcast as being a really small audience and not worth their time, which I don't like that.
Yeah.
If you have 20 listeners on a podcast, think about if you were having a conversation with them in your living room. That would feel like a really crowded room. That's a lot of people.
Right. It's also, if a larger audience is going to be not as specific, so you might not be getting in front of your ideal client, whereas those 20 people could be exactly what you're looking for.
Exactly. With podcasting, we say the riches are in the niches, which I hate that saying because I say niches, so I hate riches are in the niches because I have to say it wrong. But it's the same idea.
I switched the way I say it based on that phrase.
I refuse. I'll die on this hill.
Let's talk a little bit more about the lead gen and lead magnets. What kind of magnets are people putting out there? What kind of magnets are you putting out there?
My favorite is ebooks. I've written dozens of ebooks, and anytime I find a conference I want to speak at, I write an ebook for that industry. Anytime I talk to a new industry in any sense, I write an ebook. If I have a new idea, I write an ebook.
How long are these ebooks? Because this sounds like a huge time investment.
Like 5 pages.
Okay.
Yeah, we're going. Doable. I've written one real book, and that is it.
Yeah.
The rest of them are just throw my thoughts on a couple pages, put it in Google Docs, make a pretty cover in Canva.
Okay.
Does not have to be a huge lift, and especially with ChatGPT being there to help you write it. Read it before you turn it in.
Oh, yes.
But yeah, I love ebooks. They're a really great way to expand on something that you've already talked about. It's a great way to prove your knowledge and really create that credibility. And the general rule of thumb that I have with lead magnets when it comes to a podcast, you want it to be a continuation of the conversation. So if you were to go on a podcast to talk about one broad subject, have a lead magnet that goes into more detail and really outlines some actionable tips on that subject. Yeah. And it's going to give you more access to that audience because they go into your mailing list. And in this example, I have a lead magnet with 50 lead magnet ideas. And you brought it up, so I did not plan this plug. But again, it has its own URL, favoriteleadmagnets.com.
Oh, hold on. We got to put that in our... I'm going to have to ask you to... What is it?
favoriteleadmagnets.com. And it's 50 ideas for creative lead magnets that anyone can make.
Favoriteleadmagnets.com. There it is in the bottom if you're watching. And then if you listen to this after, well, she said it 3 times, so good luck.
It's easy to remember.
So, okay, you go in, or you get a podcast guest appearance. Beforehand, are you coming up with, this is what I'm going to talk about, and I'm going to go in and promote this lead magnet?
Easy answer is no. Because when you go on a podcast, your goal should never be to promote. And that is rule number one. Podcasts are meant to be entertaining. This is not an ad. It's not an infomercial. So when you go in promoting a product, a service, even a lead magnet, it turns it into an infomercial.
Yeah.
Like there's times, like we just did, like there are times that you can slide them in because it fits.
Right.
But for the most part, you want to hold those off until the end. And with every podcast, for the most part, at the end, they're going to say, how can listeners get in touch with you, or what's the next step? And that's when one of the things you should be doing ahead of time is nailing your call to action. Because you don't want to make the mistake of having so many. I hear that a lot. It's, oh, well, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn here, and this is my email address. Go to my website, give me a call. When you give people so many options, they do nothing. If you tell someone
by analysis.
Exactly. If you tell someone to do one thing, they will do it.
Yeah.
And with lead magnets, like if you go to favoriteleadmagnets.com, it's just a landing page on my website. So once you're there, you have my contact info, you have links to my social, you have pages about my services. Yeah. Everything is right there. But you don't have to remember all of that. You don't have to give them options. Plus, you get them in your contact list so you can reach out to them. The power is now in your hands.
I'm guessing that these ebooks or other lead magnets are all gated so that someone has to put their email address in.
Yes. The way that I set them up generally is I use a website called JotForm, which creates very simple forms. It's really plug and play. Most like email systems will have their own too. I use Constant Contact. I think they have their own. I just like the look of JotForm.
Yeah.
And just put the form in JotForm and then have the auto send email be the lead magnet.
Speaking of, we use Typeform here. I just recently got it, and which this will come up again later for everyone, but here we go. Nope, that's not the right one.
That's cute though, Savvy.
Wait for it. Here it is. This is our form.
Love it.
What's your score? So we've got Typeform and you said JotForm.
Yes.
So if you're watching and thinking about creating some sort of form, those are two that you can look into.
Yeah, they're also, I use Constant Contact for emails. They have their own form. Your website, if you have it in a WordPress, probably has its own as well. So it can be really easy. The secret that I want everyone to remember though, and a lot of people do it differently, but this is my favorite way. Don't have they fill out the form, they hit submit, and the PDF opens. Don't do that. Have it send to their email. And have a thank you page that says, thank you, your free download is going to your email. Because that means that they have to open your email.
And they can't put in a fake email.
They can't put in a fake email. They have to open it. It makes it more likely to get whitelisted so that it doesn't get blocked. And I've even had people reach out to me saying, I tried to download it. I think it's being blocked. And so I'll personally send it to them and then I add them manually. So if people are really committed to getting this piece of information, they're going to get it and you're going to get their info.
Yeah. This is great information. But let's back up a little bit.
Okay.
How do you become a podcast guest?
These are great questions. So, the simple answer is just to pitch to the shows, because if a show is interview based, they're looking for guests. But again, the thing that people do wrong is the pitch. And I have a podcast. It's called Branded. It's about personal branding. And we get pitches every day. And we ignore 95% of them because they just don't pitch correctly. And what I mean by that is I don't want to know who you are. I want to know what you're bringing to my show.
That's interesting. I'm trying to pull up an email because I just got a pitch.
Put them on the spot.
I'm going to.
I get them all the time where it's just, and I'm guilty of it. When I first started in the industry, I would just list out my client I was trying to get on podcast. This is what he's an expert in, blah, blah, blah. And it didn't work until I figured out how to do it right and learn from my mistakes.
They actually
pitched the value.
They they told me what he could talk about, which was good. And this is a third party reaching out.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta make sure I find the right screen here. Here we go. And we are going to have them on, but we are changing the topic because the topic they pitched is one that we already have booked.
Mm-hmm.
But here's an example of a pitch that we received, and I'm going to have Sarah here pick it apart.
Ooh, okay. Let me go full screen so I can read it. I'm reaching out to you to introduce Paul McManus, who's revolutionizing the way financial advisors establish their authority. He's helping them become best-selling authors. See, I wouldn't have said yes. So
why?
Because what you just pitched is basically a sales pitch. I now know who this guy is, but I don't know what his value is to my audience.
I see.
And I get that a lot. It's just like a list of all the things that they do and what they're experts in and all of that, but that means nothing to me. What I want to know is exactly what they want to talk about, the key takeaways that my audience can walk away with. What are they going to learn? What's going to be actionable so that they can walk away from this episode learning something.
So you want more of like an abstract, basically. Now we did.
Oh, okay. Wait, there looks like there was more there. Or was that your response? Okay, so they did give episode topic ideas.
Yeah, that's my bad. Because that looks like an email signature.
They gave some episode topic ideas, which is good, but it still is not enough focus on the value. So if I were to, like, I pitch myself on podcasts all the time, and I don't say, hi, I'm a marketing expert. I wrote a book and I do this for a living.
Yeah.
Larry, I'm not going to
be nice.
That's my business partner. He knows that I will berate any bad pitch because he watches me do it. But I'm not going to just list things that I do and list my services. I'm going to say, hey, I listened to your podcast. I know that your audience is interested in this topic. I talk about this topic that relates to it. And here's what I would like to share with your audience, and give a few things that are like, they'll learn how to do this. And I have 5 strategies to improve this. So I'm not pitching myself. I'm pitching what I'm bringing to your show.
Yes. Okay, that makes sense. Now, give me a second. I'll pull up another screen here of an example. I think would be more of what you're referencing. But it's going to take me a hot minute. So
no, you're fine.
While I look.
So another short answer for how to get on podcasts. There is a website called Podmatch that I'm a big fan of. That. Yes, it is. Alex and Alicia Sanfilippo created it. They are amazing human beings. We are the Alex Sanfilippo fan club. But it's basically online dating for podcasts, and you can match hosts and match guests. And there's my dog in the background. I'm so sorry.
That's why you have live.
But it's like online dating, and you can find guests and you can find shows to be a guest on. But that's where I get a lot of these pitches. And just because I can see your profile doesn't mean you don't have to pitch something like special, to pitch something valuable. So we'll go through a list of pitches that we got, and I'll just read through and say, okay, I still have no idea what you're trying to bring to my show. I have no idea what you talk about. All I know is that you are a best-selling author and you have like this many clients. That's not useful for me.
All right. Hopefully this doesn't say anything embarrassing on it, but I briefly skimmed it. I don't think it does. So this would be more in line of what you're looking for, I think. Now this title wouldn't really apply, but learning objectives, and then maybe overview, right? Hey, this is what I'm going to talk about, and here's what your audience is going to walk away with. Would you say that that's more of something that you would want to see?
Sort of, but far more personal and less like structured. So I'm actually pulling up my own Podmatch, and eventually my dog will stop.
Amazon.
And I've even had hosts like while I'm on their show, because when you talk about being a great podcast guest as a podcast guest, it is immediately a whole lot of pressure. because it's like, if I'm not doing it well, don't listen to me. But I'll talk about pitching, and I actually have had them call me out on the episode and be like, hold up, let me go read your pitch. And every time it's exactly what I say. It's pitching the value. It's not pitching myself.
Yeah.
So one of the ones that I was just on, let's see. This is actually, he became my client after I guested on his show. The show is Speaking with Confidence.
Okay.
And I said, hi, Tim. In my experience, fear of public speaking came from imposter syndrome. I have a few strategies I teach for overcoming that, but I think the one that's most relevant to your audience is this: tell stories. Nobody can argue against or disprove your stories, plus you don't have to memorize something when you're speaking from experience. I'd love to share some of my insights on the power of storytelling as a speaker, strategies for telling stories well, and some of the ways I've worked on, though haven't yet succeeded, in getting past imposter syndrome. So I didn't talk about myself. If he wants to learn more about me, he can go to my profile, because you have a whole profile like you do on a dating site.
Right.
But he knows exactly what I will bring to his show. And then he can go to my profile and vet me, make sure like, okay, she's legit. She wrote a book on this. She's like, she runs a company that does this. I trust her.
Yeah.
But they're not going to go to that step if they don't know exactly what you're trying to bring to their show and if it's worth their time.
I also want to highlight something that you just said. You said that he became a client after I was a guest. And I think usually when we go on to podcasts or speaking or anything, we're thinking, oh, the audience. We sometimes forget about the host. You know, that could also be a great avenue.
It can. And I'm also a podcast producer, so I create podcasts for businesses, and you can monetize a podcast without any listeners because you're just targeting the guests that come on your show.
Interesting.
But at the same time, if you're talking to a host that does something similar, or you can benefit from what you do, just start the conversation. And honestly, I think he started the conversation.
Yeah.
I think he had seen me speak at Podfest or something, and he's like, I've actually been wanting to get in touch with you. So it worked out really well. But one of the things that gets in the way of that is having that mentality that you're going on here to promote. What you want to be focusing on is making connections and not having the interaction be transactional.
I hear the same thing about sales, which ironically, we're talking about sales next week. Okay. And she'll be talking about that not that exact thing, but some strategies around it. But yeah, it's more about that connection and relationship.
Exactly.
Rather than promoting.
Yeah. I mean, Larry commented on here before. He used to have a podcast that he would bring on business owners to talk about their business. And he stopped doing the show because it just was so transactional. People would come on their show, promote themselves, and then he'd never hear from them again.
Yeah.
And that's not fulfilling.
Yeah.
Like, you just feel used. Yeah. So when I'm on a podcast, like, I want to add them on LinkedIn, follow them on Instagram, let them know that I'm here to support them and any other thing that they're doing. See if there's any other ways that we can collaborate and just support them, like their posts, follow their show, recommend it. Any way that you can just become their fan and become their friend is going to have so much more of an impact than I went on podcast.
Yeah. We're all in this together, basically.
Exactly. What I'm trying to say is someone come be my friend.
Yeah. We're friends now, Sarah. All right. So speaking of hosts, what should you provide to your hosts and how should you follow up?
Yeah, so every host is going to be different, but a lot of times they'll have like a form that you fill out to provide everything that is needed, or they just send you an email requesting things. Send them what they ask for, please. Yes. And do not send it as a PDF. I hate getting people's bios as a PDF because it never copies and pastes well. So you can have it pretty as a PDF, but then have a Word document version or copy and paste it into the email. Yeah. So that it can just be copied and pasted. Yeah. And have a bio that isn't 5 paragraphs in your entire career. Just have 2 paragraphs or even less. I have a bio that's specifically for podcasts.
Right.
And it's different than the bio that I have on other things. If I'm speaking at a conference, it might be a different one.
Mm.
So have that so that they know how to introduce you and they don't have to make it up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I was once introduced using an intro that was obviously generated by ChatGPT. I think they just put in my website and said introduce her.
Oh no.
It's so incorrect. I was just sitting there like, so thank you for that. None of that was true, but I appreciate being here.
It
So
sounds great. I wish it was
she
true.
was very impressive. I would love to work with her.
Mm-hmm.
I, however, no idea who she was.
Yeah.
So yeah, just provide everything that they need and follow up. Thank them for being on the show. I actually get asked a lot, like, what's the best way to thank a podcast host?
Hmm.
And I mean, I've gotten candy in the mail, I've gotten
Mm-hmm.
mugs and specialty coffee and all cards, all of this. And I'm like, that is so nice.
Yeah.
But the best way to thank a host is to just promote the episode.
Mm. Oh, yes.
Yeah, we're doing this because we want to reach new audiences too. We
Right.
don't only want to talk to the ones we're talking to, we want to grow.
Mm-hmm.
So share the episode, post it on your social media, send it to your mailing list, tell your friends about it. And don't even just share your episode. The next time they have one that's relevant to your audience, share that too.
Mm-hmm.
Become a fan of their show.
Mm-hmm.
Don't have it be transactional.
Mm. I love that. What kind of success have you seen from these strategies for you and maybe your clients?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, one of them had thousands added to their mailing list, and that was, I want to say that started in 2019, 2020, and they're
Mm.
still getting people added to their mailing list from that same show just because it's such a popular show
Wow.
and the content is evergreen.
Yeah.
So that's amazing. I've had people added to my mailing list from leads like this, but I've also have made so many connections.
Mm.
I have shows that I've been on that the hosts now feel like my friends, or the guests
Mm-hmm.
of my show now feel like my friends. I just got an email this morning from
Mm-hmm.
someone that was on my show 2 weeks ago, letting me
Mm-hmm.
know that after we hung up the call, she ordered my book and it reminded
Aw,
her why she does what she does, and she took so much from it. So
love that.
if nothing else, I got a book sale and I met someone that I had a connection with and that I will
Right.
continue to support.
Yeah.
So again, it's that ROI being return on impact. You
Mm-hmm.
add it to your website, and from one episode I added to my website, I think I had the episode was about podcast monetization.
Mm.
And the episode I added to my website had the keyword podcast
Mm-hmm.
about 40 times on the one page and
Yeah.
monetization like 30 something times.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of keywords.
Yep.
And it had like the things that Google really likes are different forms of content. So it had an audio
Mm-hmm.
player, it had a video player, it had the
Mm.
show notes and the full transcript.
Mm.
And then I took it a step further and wrote a blog about it for people who don't necessarily listen to podcasts, but
Yeah.
they're interested in the topic. So
Right.
that's another page with all of that SEO power.
Yes.
So websites get so much more traffic, and
Oh,
that
yeah.
impacts your brand.
Yes. I can attest to that one. I guess that's more as a host than a guest, but it would go both
Mm-hmm.
ways.
Yeah. The one thing I don't like to do is put like percentages or dollar figures on those returns because
Mm.
so much goes into it.
Mm-hmm.
It's very rarely just like, I don't consider podcast guesting a marketing strategy. I consider it a piece of one.
Mm-hmm.
And so combining it with all of these other things, having it grow the website presence, having it grow your social content, reaching the new audiences, getting them in your mailing list. There's so many different components of it that
Yeah.
all come together that the return is going to be way bigger than if you just said, oh, well, I was on the show and I made a book sale.
Yeah.
Like it goes so much farther than that
Yeah.
if you put in that work.
Love this. This was so helpful. And here it is. How can people reach you?
Go to this really long URL that you'll never remember. No, if you want to reach out to me, there is the lead magnet site that I said before, but I did just release my first book.
Mhm.
It is an award-winning, best-selling book, and I'm really proud of it. So it's called Open This Book, The Art of Storytelling for Aspiring Thought Leaders. And you can find it at openthisbook.com. Naturally, I love the URL. And that'll be on my website. So you'll be able to find all my contact info, social info, email, and all of that.
All right, hold on. We got to put that up. Open this book.
Thisbook.com.
Open thisbook.com.
It is a book title and a command all in one. So I hope y'all listen to directions.
Sometimes. Thank you so much, Sarah. It was delightful to have you here.
It was so fun to be here, and I'm glad that because we've done this, we are now friends.
Yes.
Because this is not transactional.
That's right.
Love it.
Love it. Awesome. All right. Oh, look, I've got everything up and prepped that I brought up earlier. Is your marketing savvy or sorry? This is a lead magnet that Sarah referenced earlier. You can find out with our quiz. It only takes 2 minutes, so it's not going to take you too much time. We do not have grade averages A, B, C, D, or E, or F because I didn't want to fail anybody. So don't worry. You won't have to worry about failing. And then join us next week as we talk to, wow, my mind just went blank. Rachel, as we talk to Rachel Covert about sales. She went from, I want to say it was 0 to over 100,000 in revenue in 1 year. And she's going to talk about how she did that, what strategies she used and practices she put into place. So you won't want to miss that. That'll be next Monday at noon, as always. So thank